The narrative begins with the global electronics industry, a battleground of excitement and danger. Display panels and semiconductor chips, regarded as the lifeblood of profits, are silently targeted by China. Initially, the Chinese Communist Party focused on the US, aiming to steal precious technology. However, the US bolstered their defenses against technology theft, leading to the failure of China's plans. China then extended its covert tentacles to Europe and Japan, only to find both countries raising their guard. As a result, China focused its attention on South Korea, a country that had poured vast resources into China but remained relatively defenseless. Due to its significant investments in Chinese semiconductors and dependency on the Chinese market, South Korea could do little but silently endure China's clandestine activities. Over the years, China's technological theft from South Korea has escalated. In the 5 years from 2018 to 2022, the loss from South Korea's technology outflow reached a staggering $19.6 billion, two-thirds of which flowed to China. On June 12th of this year, a storm erupted. The South Korean police and prosecutors filed a lawsuit targeting a former senior executive of Samsung Electronics, Mr. Choi. He was a renowned expert in the semiconductor field, developed many leading technologies during his 18 years of service in the Samsung Electronics Memory Semiconductor division, and won many tech awards. He even helped Hynix Semiconductor overcome technical difficulties, achieving the world's lowest cost DRAM and NAND flash memory manufacturing. But that was a story before 2010. He then chose the path of betrayal and sold his expertise and skills to China. In an even more gripping plot twist, Choi colluded with Foxconn to establish a new semiconductor company in Singapore. Offering double the salary, they attracted over 200 core employees from Samsung Electronics and other Korean semiconductor companies. These employees were sent to procure the design blueprints and other data from the Samsung Electronics semiconductor factory. Their goal was to establish a $6.3 billion semiconductor factory in Xi'an, China, a replica of Samsung Electronics. However, this plan never came to fruition. Yet a $360 million R&D center funded by the Chengdu municipal government was completed last year and has begun to use the stolen Samsung Electronics semiconductor technology to produce samples. This R&D building is only 1.5 kilometers away from the Samsung Electronics semiconductor factory in Xi'an, like a spy lurking in the shadows. In February of this year, South Korean intelligence discovered this plot, and Choi's mobile phone was seized. He was placed under investigation. Although Choi vehemently denied all allegations, some of his employees have confessed to their actions. The basic engineering data, BED, in semiconductor chip manufacturing is a cutting-edge technology to prevent minor impurities from contaminating the manufacturing process. Choi managed to steal a small part of this technology, the 30-nanometer process technology for mobile chips. According to South Korean prosecutors, this technology, which Samsung spent hundreds of millions to billions of dollars to develop, is considered a core secret of South Korea. The Chinese Communist Party even went a step further, setting up an R&D center in South Korea so that Korean researchers would not have to go to China, thereby avoiding surveillance by South Korean intelligence. This clandestine context revolving around high technology demonstrates the power of technology and reveals the immense input and temptation driven by the Chinese Communist Party behind Choi's motives. It's a game of overt and covert competition, where technology is the wager and market share is the marker of victory. Last year, in the global electronic products industry competition, China dominated the global LCD market with a share of 42.5%, surpassing South Korea's 36.9%. By the second quarter of 2023, in the organic light-emitting diode OLED competition, China seized half of the global shipments, intimidating the world with its dominance. These victories seem to validate China's rapid rise after technology theft. But is that really the case? These eye-catching figures might only be the tip of the iceberg, and we need to delve deeper to reveal the truth beneath. In the first half of the year, Chinese mobile phone manufacturers went on a frenzied spree of LED purchases, enabling China to account for half of the global shipments in the second quarter. Yet, with Samsung and Apple's potential massive purchases in the second half of the year, who's to say whether the figures will not turn around? Although China has made significant breakthroughs in market share, Chinese panel companies rely heavily on Korean engineers. Starting in 2015, 120 Korean engineers, including more than 50 former Samsung engineers, were hired by BOE, but these engineers were not core talents of Samsung. They only played a supporting role in some projects. Meanwhile, other Chinese panel companies began to attract Korean LCD panel talent with high salaries, 3-year contracts, and benefits to enhance their own technical capabilities. Time flew, and by 2022, BOE, CSOT, and HKC, who had mastered the design and production of LCD panels, began to reduce Korean staff involved in LCD panel design and production, with at least hundreds of layoffs. Today, those who remain in Chinese companies are mainly technical talents of OLED panels. Samsung's LED folding technology, a research result from a 6-year, $130 million investment, was sold to 4 Chinese companies by a shell company owned by an employee of Samsung supplier Top Tech. This event shows China's determination and tactics in acquiring technology. Interestingly, this seemingly brutal competition in some ways reveals the delicate balance between Chinese and Korean enterprises. For example, although Samsung and Chinese display manufacturers compete, Samsung only sells production lines to China, profiting from it, then further invests in Chinese display companies, creating a nuanced equilibrium. They are both enemies and friends. In August 2020, China Star Optoelectronics Technology CSOT bought 60% of Samsung Suzhou LCD and 100% of Suzhou Display for $1.08 billion. Samsung's employees and technicians, now donning CSOT uniforms, continue working for the new owner. Simultaneously, Samsung reinvested the funds from the sale, becoming CSOT's second largest shareholder. Even though China now controls more than 40% of the global LCD market, a significant percentage of listed Chinese companies' shares are held by Samsung. It's a sort of strategic alliance. Chinese companies profit and Korean companies share the rewards. It highlights the intertwined interests and mutual dependencies between China and Korea within the panel industry. However, the situation in the panel industry is not as rosy as it seems. The industry is maturing, with demand no longer growing and consumers not replacing their screens every year. Large amounts of investment are funneled into tech updates, and the input-output ratio is starting to look unfavorable. The panel industry may start to decline, with the Chinese LCD industry possibly sinking into a low-profit trap. In this process, China's panel manufacturers haven't truly mastered the core technology. They've picked up the technologies and production lines that others no longer need, treating this as an accomplishment, a short-sighted view. Their products are priced significantly lower than top-tier manufacturers like Samsung, which, although smaller in production volume, can turn a tenfold profit. It reveals a sad truth. Their short-sightedness and ignorance have been exposed in the process of acquiring technology. BOE Technology Group, a Beijing state-owned star company, is an important player in China's OLED production. However, despite ostensibly obtaining technologies, the internal situation is far from ideal. according to disclosures from some users on Chinese forum website Jihu. BOE's internal environment leaves much to be desired. Long working hours, scanty overtime pay, low salaries for new employees, and corruption cast a dark cloud over the company's future. A procurement officer with just 1 year of experience dares to demand kickbacks amounting to over $1 million from suppliers. A mid-level manager brazenly solicits shares from a small Korean company. In the pursuit of more kickbacks, they can even go as far as altering the casings and models of devices. Some departmental leaders in the company collude with Korean companies to create shell corporations, abusing their positions as middlemen to siphon off national wealth. Even team leaders who are merely vocational or college graduates dare to ask for bribes from suppliers. Meanwhile, the company overcuts on spending to the extent that they're reluctant to provide even rubber gloves. The technological prowess of BOE technology has garnered widespread skepticism. With staff constantly making errors, senior engineers even being oblivious to how to connect three-phase power, and section chiefs merely resorting to reinstalling systems when confronted with production line issues rather than truly pinpointing the root of the problem. It was bewildering and left the Koreans stunned. The intervention of Korean experts who simply had to reinsert a PLC, programmable logic controller, rectified the issue. They found BOE Technologies employees to be quite useless. In the eyes of Japanese manufacturers, BOE technology has become the butt of jokes. They candidly expressed in Chinese, "The people here are incompetent and incredibly pretentious. BOE technology, you truly outdid yourself if you managed to practically teach the Japanese the Chinese colloquial term for pretentious, which doesn't sound pretty." In conclusion, BOE's competitiveness in the panel and semiconductor industries is severely impacted by internal management and technical issues. Expectations of it revitalizing China's panel industry seem unrealistic. Additionally, BOE's international market behavior has stirred up considerable controversy. They have sold their OLED screens in the US market to American phone repair shops, triggering strong reactions from Samsung. Samsung, considering the US market its main battleground, filed a lawsuit in Texas, accusing BOE of stealing its iPhone 12 OLED display patents. At the recent Mobile World Congress in Shanghai, many telecommunications giants, including Nokia, Ericsson, Qualcomm, and Intel, did not attend, seemingly casting strong disapproval votes towards BOE's actions. Let's take a journey through the historical lens back to the early days of LCD panel development. Once upon a time, the novel technology of liquid crystal took root in America. However, hindered by immature technology and enormous investment, this shimmering dream of being utilized in television products was gradually fading away in the hands of Americans. Then, the Japanese picked up this dream. They applied this nascent technology to small electronic products like calculators, refined it, and gradually applying it to larger products. In the 1990s, South Korea charged into the LCD industry. Despite economic constraints, South Korea made counter-cyclical investments, expanded capacity, and upgraded production lines, ultimately wresting the crown of the LCD industry from Japan. Decades later, South Korea began to face competition from China. The strong support from the Chinese government for their local enterprises allowed companies like BOE Technology, even after suffering losses for 5 consecutive years, to still stand firm. Other panel enterprises were also subsidized, rushing forward and capturing a portion of the OLED market. However, these territories are mainly domestic within China, and entering the European and American markets is another tall mountain to climb. BOE Technology successfully entered Apple's supply chain in 2021, taking on 70% of the OLED panels for the lower-end models of iPhone 15. But later, they were expelled from the supply chain, Although they've now regained the opportunity, the road ahead is still filled with variables, especially under the backdrop of the current US government potentially taking action against China's OLED industry. The future of China's display panel industry is shrouded in mist. The importance of display technology in business, military, and national security is self-evident. Having mastery over display technology, Chinese electronic product manufacturers can have a greater competitive edge in the global market. Moreover, China itself is the world's largest market for televisions and electronic products, so controlling this market is crucial. In the military field, these display technologies can be used to make high-definition military screens, enhancing the experience of pilots, or applied to high-precision military equipment such as night vision devices and aiming devices. If all Chinese products use their own screen technology, it can, to a certain extent, ensure national information security and avoid potential threats from spy software or hardware. According to reports, the United States may impose export controls on China's OLED industry, restricting its growth as the self-emitting OLED display technology, which boasts flexibility, thinness, high contrast, wide viewing angle, color gamut, and more, is well suited for use in military, commercial vehicles, aircraft, and helmet displays for jet fighters. The F-35 stealth jet fighter, for example, employs an OLED helmet display. Therefore, although China's growth in the display panel industry seems robust, should the Western nations join hands in imposing sanctions, curbing its brawl, China might need another 5 to 10 years to truly surpass South Korea in this arena. During this period, South Korea still has plenty of opportunities to recalibrate and retaliate, making the industry competition akin to a long-lasting war filled with intensity and uncertainty. In the semiconductor industry, China is striving to break through US blockades, seeking self-reliance and trying to create a leading enterprise in chip production that can compete internationally. However, experts point out that the complexity of the interconnected semiconductor industry chain and the comprehensiveness of US sanctions makes China's breakthrough in this dire situation enormously challenging. From 2012 to 2013, China provided a massive subsidy of $42 billion to photovoltaic manufacturers, catapulting China's photovoltaic products to a commanding lead in global production share in 2013, seizing over 60%. China has attempted to replicate this model in the semiconductor sector, but apparently the results fell short of expectations. Why so? The complexity of semiconductor technology far exceeds that of photovoltaic products. Chip and equipment manufacturing require a global value chain composed of professional suppliers. The development and maturity of the suppliers in the three most crucial stages, research and design, manufacturing, assembling, testing, packaging, would all require decades. As time rolls on, the collaborative efforts made by the Biden administration and its allies to control and limit China's access to crucial, advanced semiconductor manufacturing technology may prove to be effective, potentially becoming a historical tapestry etched deeply into our minds. Before we end this video, if you like our content, we hope that you will share this video, subscribe to our channel, and give us a like for our efforts.